We'll be covering a Pentagon briefing, too, to be determined what network that will be on, but you can look for coverage later in the day. That's scheduled for 2:30. Secretary Gates and Admiral Michael Mullen at the Pentagon this afternoon. Now to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain, Pastor Elisa Lassiter-Waylu from the Capitol Hill Methodist Church here in Washington.
Let us pray. Ever-present God, we know you by many names, but most striking, you know us and each person we represent by name and with love. Thank you. God who heals, we pray for the full restoration of Representative Giffords and for the personal struggles of each person here. Remind us that you have the power and desire to heal each wound we carry into this chamber. Uniting God, give us the wisdom to understand how to work together for the plight of your people in need. Save us from ourselves and surprise us with shared solutions for the problems your children face. God of all, we represent not only those who have our ear, but those who have no voice. So let us not raise our hands to vote without bowing our hearts to your will. Through your love that changes the world, we pray. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Tennessee rise.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, I demand a vote on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal.
Question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the journal stands approved.
Mr. Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present and make the point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pledge of allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Speaker, I ask my fellow members and our guests in the gallery to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ohio. For what purposes does the gentleman from Ohio seek to be recognized?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, recognize 1 minute.
What helps make the People's House so special is its people. Every day, the staff members here give their time and energy, not just doing the job, but fulfilling the mission of keeping this body closest to the American people. Members come and go, but some dedicated public servants connect the House's history to its future. Pat Kelly is a shining example of this. Like many Americans, Pat joined the family business right out of college. She went to work for her mother, Congresswoman Edna Kelly, who was the first woman to represent Brooklyn. Pat went on to serve as a legislative assistant for other members of the New York delegation and the Rules Committee. For more than 30 years now, Pat has had a bird's-eye view of the House as editor of the Daily Digest of the Congressional Record. The Digest serves as the table of contents for each day's proceedings on the House floor and in all the committees. And Pat's job is a daily feat of precision and patience that requires pulling together information from dozens of offices. And I know all of Pat's colleagues admire her thoughtfulness and attention to detail. Today, she's retiring after 54 years of service to this institution. And it's clear that Pat has not merely recorded the House's history, she's been a rich part of it too. When the House paid tribute to Edna Kelly in 1998, Pat was quoted as saying of her mother that she was a great person to emulate. Well, let the same be said of Pat, and may all current and future public servants be inspired by her example. Pat, we're sorry to see you go. On behalf of all the members of the House and staff, thank you for the dedication to this institution, and thank you for your service.
First, for what purpose does the gentleman from California wish to be recognized? John, sorry, gentleman.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to join the Speaker of the House to honor a committed public servant, a woman of this House, a key thread in the fabric of the congressional staff, who retires today after 54 years of service, Pat Kelly. 54 years of service. Since arriving as a committee staffer in 1957, Pat Kelly has worked behind the scenes on behalf of the American people, never asking for recognition, never looking for the limelight. The daughter of Congresswoman Edna Kelly, Pat said she came to Washington because, in her words, "I just felt the urge to do something." And for more than a half a century, she did far more than her fair share. Pat Kelly has served in many roles on Capitol Hill. In all, she helped members to do their jobs and worked tirelessly on issues important to her and critical to our country's future. Few issues played a larger role for her than the fight for women's rights. In 1962, she helped her mother pass the first equal pay bill and watched with pride as President John F. Kennedy signed it into law. As a legislative aide to former Congresswoman Martha Griffiths, Pat fought for the Equal Rights Amendment, continuing the March for Equality, advancing the cause of justice for all women. Thank you, Pat. We're all in your debt. Through it all, whether the legislation succeeded or failed, she stood by a simple mantra: it's important for women to be involved. For the past 22 years, she has served as editor of the House Daily Digest, tracking committee activities and getting the word out on what's happening on Capitol Hill. In that role, she has noted, "I've been through the turnover to Republicans and back to Democrats and tried to help each and every one of them do their jobs. Helping others do their jobs, working in a bipartisan way, this was the essence of Pat Kelly's career and service." Pat Kelly's 54 years serving the House of Representatives is a reflection of her own dedication to Congress and the country, and represents the commitment, devotion to duty, and passion for service of all of our congressional staffers. Thank you, Pat, for giving so much to the House, for all of your work and fulfilling your promise to do something for all Americans. Yes, I join the Speaker in saying you will be missed. We're sorry that you are leaving. We wish you much success, and with deep gratitude, send you our love and best wishes. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the distinguished gentleman from Texas wish to be recognized? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the many egregious and punitive parts of Obamacare is the burdensome 1099 rule, a paperwork regulation that forces millions of businesses to file a 1099 tax form each time they spend over $600 per vendor. The National Association for Self-Employed reports that those companies with 10 or fewer employees, their paperwork burden is going to jump from an average of 2 per year to roughly 27 per year, a whopping 1,250% paperwork increase. Main Street mom and pop shops don't need the added cost of more regulatory requirements at a time when their efforts are rightly focused on just staying in business. It's jobs we're protecting. It's time to repeal the 1099 rule right now. Yield back.
And yields back. The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has agreed to S-Con-Res 8, recognizing women serving in the United States Armed Forces, in which the concurrence of the House is requested.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, time to govern is now. The reckless continuing resolution that Republicans passed 2 weeks ago is an abject failure of leadership. In the race for ever-increasing and arbitrary cuts, they demonstrated on a party-line vote that they know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Moody's Analytics said their approach would cost 700,000 jobs. The Economic Policy Institute said it would cost 800,000 jobs. Goldman Sachs said it would lower economic growth by 2% and increase unemployment by 1%. Even the Conservative Club of Growth called it a mistake, stating cutting spending is important, but economic growth is even more important. Mr. Speaker, I ask that all of us, Republicans and Democrats, negotiate in good faith, in a bipartisan manner, to pass a fiscally responsible CR that reduces deficits without sacrificing economic growth, that prioritizes investments in our economy, that support American competitiveness without costing jobs. Let's pass a continuing resolution that strengthens the economy and creates jobs for all Americans, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee wish to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I request permission to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last Tuesday, the top front page story in USA Today said gas will soon hit $5 a gallon. If it does, it will really slow our recovery, and some think it could lead to another recession. It will really hurt the already hurting small towns and rural areas because their people, on average, have to drive further distances to go to work. Environmentalists want gas to go much higher so people will drive less. But if gas goes to $5 a gallon or even higher, it will hurt a lot of poor and lower income and working people. I know most environmentalists come from very wealthy or upper income families, and I know they will say we don't have enough oil to drill our way out of this problem. But if we would at least start producing a little more oil, it would be harder for other countries to keep raising their prices. President Clinton vetoed drilling in Anwar in the mid-90s, stopping 1 million more barrels a day from being produced here. When environmental radicals stop more domestic oil production, it helps foreign energy producers, but it really hurts middle and lower income Americans. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes does the gentleman from California wish to be recognized? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, Congress should be focusing on creating jobs, helping middle-class families, and lowering the deficit with intelligent spending cuts. And I say with intelligent spending cuts. But instead, we're headed towards a devastating government shutdown. Policy experts from across the political spectrum all agree the Republican budget will result in more job losses, I state, more job losses, and more suffering of our families. Senator McCain's chief economic advisor estimates that the Republican budget will lead to 7,000 jobs being lost, 7,000 jobs being lost. Even Wall Street firms, the Goldman Sachs, say the budget plan will cause our economy to shrink by 2%. In my district, teachers, police officers, firefighters who are set to lose their jobs deserve better. I say they deserve better. The time to play politics with our budget is over. I urge my Republican friends to break free from the extremists in their party. Let's work together. Let's work together on a real plan to create jobs and straighten our economy. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from West Virginia wish to be recognized?
To address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the life and legacy of Mr. Frank Buckles, the sole surviving U.S. World War I veteran who passed away on Sunday at the age of 110 in his hometown of Charlestown, West Virginia. Inspired for his love of his country and the desire to serve, Frank entered the Army at age 16. He served in England and France during the war, first as a car and ambulance driver and later as an escort for returning German POWs. During World War II, he was held as a prisoner of war in the Philippines for 39 months. He has been recognized as a true American patriot and awarded numerous medals. I have met Frank on several occasions. He was his constituent of my district and was always inspired by his sense of humility and hope. He represents the very best of this country: service, determination, and patriotism. He has lived through some of the most historic events in our American history, from the Great Depression to 2 world wars to the invention of the Internet, reminding us of the immense progress yet change that we have seen in this nation. For years, Frank has dedicated his life to ensuring his fellow doughboys receive proper national recognition. I hope this Congress will honor the legacy of Frank Buckles and the legacy of all those who fought in the war to end all wars by paying tribute to them with a national memorial. Let Frank's legacy remind us of the service and sacrifice all veterans make in the name of protecting America and all for which she stands. Our thoughts and prayers go to the Buckles family. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purposes does the gentlelady from California wish to be recognized? Without objection, gentlelady is recognized. 1 minute.
So be it. That's what Republicans are saying to 700,000 American workers who will be needless casualties of their gutting and slashing funding bill. So be it. That's the Republican attitude to a government shutdown if they don't force more cuts, destroying more jobs. So be it. That's the Republican message to 1 out of every 11 Americans struggling to find work. The GOP continuing resolution does nothing to create jobs. In fact, it takes a step backward, weakening our economic recovery. Of course, I shouldn't be surprised. Over the last 8 weeks since the Republicans took over control of the House, they haven't created a single job. What's worse, they haven't even put a single jobs bill on the House floor. So while Republicans say, so be it, I say, stop the war on working families and show me the jobs.
The chair must remind all members not to wear communicative badges while under recognition. Thank you. For what purposes does the gentlewoman from California wish to be recognized? Without objection, gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Jobs, jobs, jobs. That's what people back home want, jobs. Everybody I know wants a job. People stand in line. They want a job. And so now we're at this crucial deadline. And the Republicans want to shut down the government because their strategy for this year is just to gut everything. Everything. Anything. 700,000 jobs. 800,000 jobs. Depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to the Moody's person, it's 700,000. If you're talking to the Economic Institute, it's 800,000. So while they concentrate on eliminating jobs, I believe most of us here, Democrats, are working hard to understand what's an investment. How do we help people to get their next job? Where do they get their education? Where do they get their training? How about building the high-speed rail, for example, in California to create jobs? I think Republicans need to get back to work.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes does the gentleman from Michigan wish to be recognized? Without objection, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, while today we're debating on how we can address public needs with fewer and fewer public dollars, I'm here to bring good news on how this past Congress, invested our tax dollars to help save jobs. The new General Motors that I proudly represent recently announced a new financial milestone: 4 consecutive quarters of profitability. That's not only good for GM, its shareholders, but also for its employees, the majority of whom will receive profit sharing of over $4,000 each. And what that shows is that when this Congress works with our President to invest in U.S. manufacturing, that helps all of us to make it in America. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purposes does the gentleman from Rhode Island wish to be recognized?
For 1 minute.
Without objection, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with serious concerns about the lack of a true jobs plan from the Republican majority as we seek to tackle our spending challenges. And as the race continues to find the next deepest cut, just who are the real losers? It seems to me the hardest hit. It's middle-class families, our children, our seniors, our students, and women. This war on working families must end. Our people are our greatest asset. In order to move our country out of this recession, we must invest in their success. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are moving forward with yet another dangerous spending bill, one that continues to give rewards to the most successful among us and literally guts the initiatives most meaningful to middle-class families. The work of reducing our deficit and controlling spending is no doubt hard. The fact of the matter is that we have to cut spending, but we have to do it responsibly. And as we seek to make a compromise this week, let's remember that we cannot cut what makes us competitive and what helps us innovate, succeed in the global economy, and ultimately create jobs. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes does the gentleman from Kentucky wish to be recognized?
With permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the richest 1% of Americans now control 1/3 of our nation's income, 120% more than they did 30 years ago. CEOs now earn hundreds of times what the average worker does. Wall Street profits are up 720% since 2007, and corporate taxes are at their lowest point since the 50s. All things considered, the wealthiest Americans are doing pretty well, much better than the rest of the country, in fact. So you'd think that after all these gains, the super rich, a handful of Americans who control fully 1/3 of our economy, would understandably be asked to help as we try to bring our fiscal house back into order. But the Republican spending plan does none of this. It puts the burden of cuts solely on the shoulders of working families, those already struggling to make ends meet and provide for their families. And the Republican plan spares the richest Americans even the slightest inconvenience. They propose to slash the budgets for programs that help seniors heat their homes, help low-income women find a doctor, and help millions of American students access job training or affordable college health care. This is a reckless plan. We need to reject it and make this economy work for everyone.
Expired. The gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes does the gentleman from Connecticut wish to be recognized?
Address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend.
Without objection, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, there are smart cuts and there are dumb cuts. The majority's continuing resolution, the reception it has received, suggests that it's full of dumb cuts. It's been rejected by pretty much everybody. Outright rejection to concerned hilarity is how it's been greeted by investment banks, by economists, by people who think about this stuff. But there's something worse than a dumb cut, and that's a counterproductive cut. In a misguided effort to reduce the number of abortions in this country, the Republican majority zeroed out Title X funding for Planned Parenthood. I have a Planned Parenthood office down the hall from my congressional office in Bridgeport. I see women coming through there mainly to learn about birth control, to be responsible about their reproductive lives, to be tested for STDs. There are estimates. Remember, 3% of Planned Parenthood's activities is abortion. There are estimates that zeroing out Title X, which the majority has done, will cause 400,000 more abortions in this country. That's counterproductive, it's wrong, and I would urge this House to reject a very bad idea and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes does the gentleman from Colorado wish to be recognized?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in solidarity with the people of various Arab countries that have risen up to throw off the yoke of tyranny that has oppressed them for too long. Mr. Speaker, now is a time for us to let our idealism trump our cynicism, a time for hope, not fear. I understand that there are people who are worried about the realpolitik of how developments might lead to changes in the world, but most Americans, Mr. Speaker, have deep and unabiding sympathy for any who have democratic aspirations across the world. We support, as a country, the aspirations of all people to be heard in their government. The only just government is one that governs by the consent of the governed. And for too long, Mr. Speaker, too many Arabs and too many people across the world have suffered under unresponsive and tyrannical leaders, and now is a time for hope to change that and create a new Middle East that better supports democratic values. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes does the gentlelady from California wish to be recognized? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I recently surveyed my constituents and asked them what they thought I should spend my time on in 2011. No surprise, they said jobs, create jobs. 15 million Americans without work today. And what does the Republican continuing resolution do? It is going to add another 700,000 jobs lost in America. By Mark Zandi, the fine economist who was the advisor to John McCain when he was running for president. 700,000 jobs. So why would they do this? You got to scratch your head. The reason why they want to do this is because they only win if the economy is down, if there are more jobs lost. So their whole approach is not to be Americans, but to be Republicans. I say, Republicans, join us in being Americans first. Let's create a job-seeking engine. Let's create jobs in this country, not take them away. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purposes does the gentleman from New York wish to be recognized? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, a democracy is not beautiful edifices or beautiful buildings or even words written on paper. A democracy's foundation is the people, and today we pay tribute on the retirement of Pat Kelly, someone who has really helped our democracy thrive. For 54 years, she has been one of the people that anonymously and without much fanfare has made sure that this democracy, whose very foundation is the longest continually maintained journal in the world, kept running. She did it as a proud daughter of Brooklyn, and she comes from a truly patriotic family. Her mother was a member of Congress, as the Speaker and Minority Leader have pointed out. Her grandfather, William Kelly, was the Postmaster General of Brooklyn, and I was proud to kind of make quasi-association with Pat when I was in the City Council and I got some funds to fix up Kelly Playground, where so many of us enjoyed Brooklyn. You know, it really is true that many of us as members of Congress blithely come through here, we cast our votes, we give our speeches, and it's easy for us to forget that this democracy is not about us, it's about the participation of citizenry and, of course, the hard work of so many people that make this institution so grand. Pat Kelly is such a person. She is an institution unto herself. She will be missed around here, but I can tell you she will not be forgotten. We remember her for her charm, her smile, her grace, and the way with which she did her job. So to her family, the entire Kelly family, from all of the people from her home borough of Brooklyn, I want to say to her congratulations on her retirement. She will be missed. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes does the gentleman from Florida wish to be recognized? Without objection, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, a 2-week extension to fund the government may prevent a shutdown, but it will not change the fact that a serious choice lies before this Congress. Will 2011 be a year in which we continue to grow our economy? A year that builds on the over 1 million private sector jobs created in 2010? Or will it be remembered as the year extremists ignored the warnings of world-class economists at Moody's Analytics and Goldman Sachs and allowed our economy to shrink by over 700,000 jobs? Will 2011 be a year in which we prepare America's children to compete in a global economy? Or will it be the year that right-wing extremists in Congress defied common sense, cutting Pell Grants, blaming teachers for the deficit, and punishing struggling school districts across America for a financial crisis they did not cause? In 2 weeks, these choices will once again come before this Congress. I implore the Republican leadership to seize this opportunity, not for partisan gain, but for America's gain. Let's reduce the deficit in a way that does not jeopardize our recovery and make 2011 a year we move forward instead of backwards. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes does the gentleman from Illinois seek to be recognized? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I returned to Illinois last week, I talked to my constituents, and the refrain I heard over and over was their frustration and concern about the pain they're feeling at the gas pump. And it's not just hurting them, it's threatening and to damage our economy. It's already a weak economy, and it's damaging it even worse. At this moment, the average cost of a gallon of gas in my home state of Illinois is over $3.50, more than 10 cents higher than the national average. These prices are unseasonably high, hitting Illinoisans and Americans hard in their already thinned pocketbooks and threatening our economy's tenuous recovery. It's clear that Congress must act to protect our constituents from even higher gas prices by expanding our nation's domestic energy production. More energy production here at home would not only reduce the cost of gas, putting money back in the wallets of every American, it would also create the kind of good-paying jobs that so many people need and will help get our economy running again. Creating jobs, saving our constituents money, helping our economy. These should be bipartisan goals, and we can achieve them by expanding American energy production. I hope we can come together to accomplish these goals in these weeks and months ahead, and I yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes does the gentleman from Georgia wish to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 115 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 11, House Resolution 115, resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 44, making further continuing appropriations for fiscal year 2011 and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the joint resolution are waived. The joint resolution shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the joint resolution are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the joint resolution to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations, and 2, 1 motion to recommit.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my friend from Colorado, Mr. Polis, pending which time I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I also ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, House Resolution 115 provides a closed rule for consideration of H.J. Res. 44. This bill would fund the government through March 18th and reduce federal spending by $4 billion over the remainder of the fiscal year. The measure cuts $2.7 billion in earmarks from energy and water, labor HHS, transportation and HUD, Homeland Security, ledge branch appropriations. But most importantly, this measure averts a government shutdown and allows the Senate time to continue to consider H.R. 1, the bill that we successfully passed in this chamber just 1 week ago. Mr. Speaker, on that bill, we had roughly 50 hours of debate from both sides of the aisle, debate that ran late into the night, that allowed the House to work its will for the first time in a long time. And the end result was that continuing resolution, H.R. 1, that now sits idly in the Senate. This resolution today, this rule today, which I urge members to strongly support, will allow for the 2-week extension of federal funding to allow the Senate time to seriously consider this bill. Again, H.R. 1, the first bill in a long time on which the House has had a chance to work its will. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 4 days, Mr. Speaker. In 4 days, the federal government will run out of money. We must ask ourselves, how did we get into this dire situation where we are 4 days away from critical federal services being closed and our federal government being unable to meet its obligations? Today, we're racing the clock to avoid this shutdown, in large part because we've squandered the past 2 weeks debating H.R. 1, a ridiculous spending bill that contained some cuts so extreme it had no realistic chance of ever being passed into law, and left other areas of the budget that both sides have generally agreed need to be cut untouched. H.R. 1 also had Every bit of social legislation from the Republican majority, including gutting the ability of EPA to protect our air and our water, defunding Planned Parenthood and family planning, so that it had a threat of a presidential veto and faces no realistic prospects of passage in the Senate. So rather than working with Democrats in the House and Senate to craft a real long-term CR that would preserve the gains of our economy, invest in our future, Republicans have squandered the past few weeks to pass their out-of-touch and unrealistic spending bill that would prove devastating to our economy, our safety, our health, and, yes, our values. Their draconian spending bill would destroy 700,000 jobs, according to Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's and former advisor to Senator John McCain. And as Goldman Sachs said, their long-term CR would stall the economic recovery and reduce U.S. economic growth. In fact, just this morning, more than 300 economists from across the country warned against the massive GOP spending bill, stating that, as economists, we believe it is short-sighted to make budget cuts that eliminate necessary investments in our human capital, our infrastructure, and the next generation of scientific and technological advances. These cuts threaten our economy's long-term competitiveness. Mr. Speaker, today's continuing resolution meets our shared goal of preventing a federal government shutdown, but at what cost and for how long? We are committed to reducing the deficit, beginning with an aggressive attack on waste, fraud, and abuse. Every member of this body owes it to our constituents to responsibly cut spending and balance the budget without sacrificing jobs or weakening our economy. Time and time again, the Republican leadership has told us that we want to proceed in an open and transparent fashion, and yet here we are again facing another closed rule, shutting out amendments from both sides and stifling the legislative process and good cost-cutting ideas from both sides of the aisle. In fact, yesterday in Rules Committee, my colleagues took a party-line vote to block an amendment by the top-ranking member on the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Dix. Mr. Dix's amendment would have cut more funds than the Republican bill and at the same time restored funds for education programs. In the spirit of the urgent need for cost-cutting and balancing the deficit, I think this body should consider ideas from both sides of the table and allow a rule that allows for discussion of the Dix Amendment and other ideas to cut costs even further than this CR allows. This CR may succeed in keeping the government open from March 5th through March 18th, which I think we all agree is necessary, but we also all know that 2 weeks is not nearly enough time to negotiate a long-term solution to the enormous spending challenges we face, especially when the Constitution guarantees the President 10 of those days to decide whether to sign or veto the bill. The other side has discussed at the end of last session the need to have stability with regard to what kind of taxes people and businesses can expect over time. And at the end of last session, we passed a bill that set predictability for 2 years so people and businesses know what their taxes will be. Well, the other side of that coin is we need predictability and stability around appropriations and the general activities of government. It is stifling to the economy and stifling to job creation for people to be uncertain as to whether the largest enterprise in our country, the federal government, will or won't be solvent in 4 days' time. This is my 3rd year in Congress and already the 4th time I've managed to rule on a short-term CR. The shortened timeline set out by this CR sets the stage for a devastating shutdown crisis every 2 weeks that will bring legislating to a standstill, impede hopes of a long-term economic growth, and create enormous overhang on the markets because of this great uncertainty that is of our own creation. We are also undermining through this CR, Mr. Speaker, investments in our own future. Take the cuts to literacy programs, for example. Building an excellent public education system that ensures that each and every child has the opportunity to succeed is the most important investment that we can make in our nation's future and developing our human capital, which helps keep America competitive. This is an investment that I've spent much of my life to support and achieve on the State Board of Education as a founder of a charter school and now here in Congress. What we see now, however, from the proposed short-term CR is the elimination of the Striving Readers Fund, which supports literacy for students from preschool through 12th grade. With American students' reading scores stagnating for the past 30 years, this proposal makes no sense. Striving Readers is the only targeted federal literacy funding for preschool through 12th grade, and particularly in a time of state and local budget cuts, these resources are more important than ever. Now, we can agree that striving readers should be improved. In fact, I'm working along with Congressman Yarmouth to provide the LEARN Act, which would ensure that teachers and students have innovative strategies and data-backed tools to improve reading and writing. And the administration has a proposal to build on the progress of the Striving Readers program. President Obama said in his State of the Union address, "It's not just about how we cut, but what we cut." Republicans have mistakenly claimed that the administration also wants to eliminate striving readers, but they neglect to mention that the administration's 2012 budget proposes instead to revise, improve striving readers. The goal is not to reduce and eliminate federal support for literacy. It is to consolidate and make more efficient federal support for literacy, to strengthen literacy performance expectations, scale up innovative methods of teaching reading, writing, and language arts. In fact, nearly all states, 44, have applied for the first $10 million in Striving Readers allocation that was available and have developed state literacy plans as a result. My home state of Colorado has been awarded $150,000 for these important projects. Literacy is the foundation of learning. It's the gateway to other content areas that are increasingly important in a global society, like science and math. Destroying the foundation of literacy is cutting off our nation's own legs. Education is an investment in our future. By pulling the rug out from under our schools and children, Republicans seem willing to sacrifice our future prospects as a nation. Education is how America can reclaim our edge in job creation, bring jobs back to our shores, become better business leaders, and provide a livable wage for working families. We all agree that cuts must be made. But as the Romans said, caveat emptor, may the buyer beware. By agreeing to cuts in repeated short-term CRs, we run the risk of opening the door to a spending agenda that arbitrarily kills jobs, hurts our communities, completely undermines education reform, and we do nothing to promote the stability of the federal government that markets require to allow businesses to thrive and grow. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume to say to my friend, I could not agree with him more. We must ask ourselves, how did we get here? How did we get here? I've been on the job for 60 days, but the fiscal year began back on October 1st of 2010. How did we get here? We got here because the work of the People's House didn't get done last year, and I regret that. And candidly, I'm not sure how. I hear so many folks talk about the partisanship in the Congress and the partisanship in Washington, D.C., and people can't get things done because of partisanship. But, of course, last year, Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and yet we still sit here today without a budget, without the appropriations that the Speaker knows we need for the government to continue its operations. How did we get here? I don't know. But I know this. Nobody elected me in November to come up here and point the finger of blame. They elected me to work with my friend to clean up this mess. Irrespective of how we got here, we have to move forward. And I have to say, because I was at home, Mr. Speaker, for the past week with my constituents working through these very same issues that we're talking about today. And the question I got over and over and over again is, Rob, that's a great start, but let's do more. That's a great start, but let's do more. You know, getting started is what's so hard. It's hard to get started. Over and over again, we have heard our friends on both sides of the aisle say, you know, this program, it can be fixed. It can be fixed. I wonder if we'll have a day here where we can start from a blank sheet, just a blank sheet, and say, what is it that's worth borrowing from our children for? What is it that is worth increasing our children's credit card balance for? What is it that's worth mortgaging our children's future for? And let me just say to my friend, because I know he has a great passion for education, and it's a passion that I very much respect, I have the great fortune of coming from a part of the world called Gwinnett County, Georgia. And Gwinnett County was the recipient of the Broad Prize for the single best urban education school district in America. We'd made the finalists 2 years ago, but last year we won. And we won in spite of federal government intervention, not because of it, in spite of it. We won because as a community we got together back in 1996 and said, there's a better way. What can we do to enable our children to succeed better? We were doing standardized testing in Gwinnett County before standardized testing was in vogue because we knew we had to have a way to measure. We knew we had to have a way to sort out what works and what doesn't. Well, folks, we need some of that standardized testing here on Capitol Hill. What works and what doesn't? And there are a lot of things that aren't working. Not only do we need to get the bad out of the budget, we've got to decide that we're going to choose between good and good. Between good and good, because every school group I spoke to over our district work week is a school group from whose future we're borrowing, whose future we're mortgaging. Over and over and over again, it has to be said that the House worked its will in an unprecedented fashion. An unprecedented fashion. Mr. Speaker, I don't say that lightly. I mean never, never before in modern times has the House worked its will on a continuing appropriations bill the way it did last week. Again, I don't care whose fault it is. I don't care why we couldn't get it done last October. I don't care why we couldn't get it done in November. I don't care why we couldn't get it done in December. What I care about is we have an opportunity to get it done, and we did that last week. And the House worked its will, and we had some winners and we had some losers. I voted for a number of amendments that failed. I didn't get everything I wanted in that bill. I know my friend from Colorado didn't get everything he wanted in that bill. But the House worked its will, Mr. Speaker, with unprecedented openness. And H.R. 1 was the result. Well, I asked my staff to call over to the Senate before I came down here. I wanted to find out exactly how much debate the Senate had been putting in on H.R. 1. Of course, we debated it for almost 50 hours, went through the night on a couple of nights, so wanted to make sure the entire House had an opportunity to be involved in that. My staff tells me, Mr. Speaker, not a moment. Not a moment. I hear the sense of urgency from my friend from Colorado that we have to take action. This is no way to run a government. I think he's right. I think he's right. I think cleaning up this mess means passing a single continuing resolution that gets us through to the end of the fiscal year. For Pete's sakes, the Appropriations Committee is already taking testimony to try to get us into the 2012 budget cycle. This is leftover work that simply didn't get done last Congress. Not 1 second has been spent on the Senate side, Mr. Speaker, from what my staff tells me. Not 1 second has been spent considering a bill on which the entire United States House of Representatives worked its will. A bill that was the only open process that this House has seen on a continuing resolution. A bill that allowed members from both sides of the aisle to come down here to the House floor and represent their constituents back home by doing exactly what my friend from Colorado is suggesting, trying to make good cuts, trying to make those things, present those things on the House floor that make the most sense to folks back home. Well, Mr. Speaker, we are where we are. No one wants the Senate to act expeditiously on the work of the People's House more than I do. But given that not one moment has been dedicated to that, we have to come down here and fund the government one more time. It's the responsible thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do. The better thing to do would be to act on H.R. 1, which the House passed last week with the support of the members here in this body. But now we have to come down here and extend just for 2 weeks to give us time to finish those negotiations with the Senate side. And if that's not enough time, I suspect we'll be back down here again. My friend from Colorado and I will be down here in this same well doing this same thing. But it's no way to run the government, Mr. Speaker. It's no way to run the government. This is just what we have to do while we wait on the Senate to take up that bill on which the House worked its will last week. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time.
I'll yield myself 30 seconds. The gentleman from Georgia said, let us do more to save money, and yet this rule shuts down the process and doesn't allow amendments from the minority, including one by Mr. Dix that saved over $1 billion and would have reduced the deficit by over $500 million, and yet again, through this closed rule, we are unable to do more thanks to this restrictive rule by the Republican majority. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison.
Is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the rule in the underlying bill, House Joint Resolution 44. This bill is just another part of the reckless Republican no-jobs agenda. Instead of focusing on creating jobs, Republicans are trying to cut nearly 1 million jobs across the country. Republicans have been in control of the House for now than 2 months. They've been in control of the House for now more than 2 months, and have failed to bring up a single bill to create a single job. I mean, they haven't done just a poor job. They haven't done anything. And this bill is just a mini version of a larger Republican drive that America across America that America soundly rejected a week ago. I'm absolutely against starting down a series of short-term cuts, of short-term CRs that results in a bleed of the American middle class. This is death by 1,000 cuts, a slow bleed. As Speaker Boehner stated earlier this week before the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, he says, if they don't eat the whole loaf one at a time, he said of Democrats, we'll make them eat it one slice at a time. And this is what this CR, this short-term CR is all about. One slice at a time, with the goal of shoving a whole loaf down the throat of the American people. The American people don't want the Republican layoffs. They want jobs. Let's be clear. The bill before us today is just one more battle in this fight, in this battle to keep American jobs. It's the same job cuts that Republicans passed a week ago, just a 2-week version of it. The Republicans' reckless so-be-it attitude on spending destroys jobs that threaten America's economy. So you don't have to take my word for it. All you have to do is read the report released by Chief Economist at Moody's, Mark Zandi, if you want to know about the Republican No Jobs Agenda, CR, which would cut 700,000 jobs by year-end if they make us eat one slice at a time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman's recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
The 700,000 jobs by the year-end of 2012 and reduce real economic growth. Let me quote economist Mark Zandi directly. While long-term government spending restraint is vital and laying out a credible path toward that restraint is very desirable, too much cutting too soon would be counterproductive. The economy is adding about 100,000 to 150,000 jobs a month, and until that number reaches about 200,000 on a monthly basis, quote, imposing additional government cuts before this has happened would hurt the recovery. So, with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
To put these cuts in perspective, because, again, we have to get started somewhere. There's not going to be a speaker that stands up here today that doesn't speak out in favor of fiscal restraint. The question is, when do we start and how much do we do? Now, to put this bill in perspective, the bill that's before us today, the continuing resolution to fund for 2 weeks and has about $4 billion in cuts in it, compare that to the bill we passed last week with $100 billion in cuts in it. Now put that $100 billion in cuts in perspective. Let's take the average American family who has to go out and buy their groceries, 31-day grocery bill. What we're asking of the American people is, knowing that you've got to go out and buy 31 days worth of groceries, let's cut 1 day out. We're going to tell you now, but we're going to cut 1 day out, and we need you to stretch your 30 days worth of groceries into 31. Now, Mr. Speaker, that doesn't seem that draconian. In fact, it doesn't seem draconian at all. In fact, it seems like what American families are doing over and over and over again in the recession that we've been battling. Now, when we talk about these jobs numbers, these are the same jobs numbers that folks said, if only you'll put your children in debt to the tune of another $1.5 trillion, we'll get unemployment down under 8%. Same economists who said, well, it didn't work the first year, but what if we do it the second year? We put you in debt to the tune of $1.6 trillion, in addition to the 1.5, in addition to the 1.3 the year before, then we're going to get unemployment back down under 8%. Mr. Speaker, those jobs didn't materialize because the federal government can't create jobs. We can destroy jobs. We can and we do, but we can't create jobs. Our young entrepreneurs create those jobs. The business owners in our communities create those jobs. We destroy jobs, but we cannot create jobs. And that's what this continuing resolution is a recognition of, Mr. Speaker, that the government can absolutely get out of the way, can absolutely get out of the way. We're not going to hear today about the number of jobs that will be lost if the EPA continues to classify carbon dioxide as a pollutant and hamstrings the American economy in ways that no other economy on this planet is hamstrung. We're not going to hear those jobs numbers. H.R. 1 would solve that. We have to get started somewhere. Have to get started somewhere. And, Mr. Speaker, I take no pride of authorship. I'm just a participant in H.R. 1 as it passed the House, as the House worked its will, as Democratic amendments passed and Republican amendments passed. I wish we'd been governing the right way, and this had been done back on October 1st. Now, when we passed that continuing resolution, it's unclear to me why there was no open process there, and we passed the second one in December and then the third one in December again. The openness that this House has seen in this 112th Congress is unprecedented. Absolutely unprecedented. Now, I know my friend from Colorado is a strong supporter of CBO and the work that CBO does. I couldn't agree with him more. When Mr. Dix came before the committee last night with an amendment that would cut even more, as someone who believes we need to cut more, I was incredibly enthusiastic about that. Now, my understanding was CBO hadn't had a chance to score that amendment, that there was no scoring to be had, and so we couldn't tell whether or not this was going to cut or whether this was going to add or how the spend rates were going to sort themselves out, because it came at the very last minute. But what didn't come at the last minute was the opportunity for the minority to offer a substitute. And the Speaker reached out to the minority to say, if you're interested in offering the same continuing resolution that you offered before that was going to freeze funding, because we've heard that word a lot, Mr. Speaker. Let's just freeze things. Nothing. We don't want to cut anything. We don't want to be draconian. Let's just freeze. But if you wanted to offer that as a substitute, that the majority would have absolutely made that in order. Absolutely made that in order. So again, the House could work its will. But my understanding is that offer was turned down, and folks were not interested in offering that substitute. I would have been a proud no vote on that substitute, but I still believe that, as the gentleman from Colorado said, openness in the process yields to a better result. Which brings me full circle, Mr. Speaker, to H.R. 1. The single continuing resolution that's had more openness in the process than any other continuing resolution that this House has ever considered. And it led to the best process, and it led to the best outcome. And that is the bill that sits in the United States Senate today, that could be acted on today, that would fund the government and provide the certainty that we need today through the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. So when we're talking about certainty, and I absolutely believe that our economy needs certainty, and it's the government that's creating the uncertainty. We're creating the uncertainty. We have historically created the uncertainty. We have an opportunity with H.R. 1 to eliminate that uncertainty for the rest of the fiscal year, to get back to doing what this House always should have been doing, which is considering appropriations bills under regular order. And candidly, I hope my friends on the Democratic side of the aisle are throwing down that gauntlet today, saying, you know, Rob, it's not easy to lead. It's not easy to move bills through regular order. I want that opportunity to try. I want an opportunity to do it the right way. And if we can move H.R. 1 across the Senate, through the Senate, onto the President's desk, we can then come together with the same kind of open process that we began 2 weeks ago to consider all of the appropriations bills and make the priorities that this House chooses to make priorities. Not last Congress, not 2 Congresses ago, not President Obama in his first year, not President Bush in his last term, but this House today, together. What are our priorities? And as soon as we move this continuing resolution behind us, Mr. Speaker, we can begin to focus on those priorities, which is where the true work of the House is intended to be. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. You know, I like the gentleman from Georgia. He's a nice guy, but I have to say that his story about what actually happened here is not exactly accurate. Fact of the matter is, when the Democrats were in charge in the last Congress, we did have an omnibus appropriations bill, but it was the Senate Republicans that refused to provide the votes, because as you know, you need a supermajority in the Senate. And then he talked about how he was glad to be home last week. Well, I was glad to be home last week, too, and I got a lot of input. But we should have been working here and not moving up so perilously close to these deadlines where the government could actually shut down. And I think my fear is that we're just going to be kicking the can down the road every 2 weeks, facing another possible government shutdown. And as the gentleman from Colorado said, that creates economic uncertainty in the economy. Now, I just wanted to comment on the word jobs and talk about jobs, because that's the problem here. This H.R. 1 that he talks about, we know is going to destroy jobs. Various accounts, 700,000, 800,000 jobs that will be destroyed or will be eliminated, not just because the government isn't paying for the jobs, but because it doesn't invest in the future. If you listen to what President Obama said in his State of the Union address, he said that the government has a role. The gentleman from Georgia says the government should get out of the way. Well, I don't agree with that. We need to make wise investments in our future, in our education programs, which this cuts, in our research and development for the future, in infrastructure so that we can have roads and highways and mass transit so that commerce can continue and we can grow the economy. That's what's wrong with H.R. 1 and this larger bill that the Republicans have put forward. And of course the Senate can't take up the bill the way it is because they know it will destroy jobs and cripple the economy. So what I ask is for my Republican colleagues, go out there, sit down with the Senate Democrats, sit down with the House Democrats. Don't just say take it or leave this bill that we know has such draconian cuts and doesn't do anything to invest in America's future. We can't continue down this road. We've got to work together.
Gentleman's time has expired.